Welcome to TriloTalk. This is a podcast dedicated to topics that we think are important to the profession of medical writing. And our goal is to bring these topical issues and ideas to the forefront and spark conversations in the medical writing community.
So, I'm Nidhi Johal, Director of Medical Writing for North America at Trilogy, and I'm here today with Cleo, who's one of our medical writing managers at Trilogy and manager team of medical writers in North America. And we're going to talk to you today about managers in medical writing, and we're specifically talking about line management here. So I do want to clarify that. In this podcast, we're going to talk about things that you can think of if you're considering a management role, steps that you can take to help you get there, and discuss some key challenges of transitioning from a medical writer, individual contributor to an actual line manager. And then we'll talk a little bit more about some strategies to balance those new responsibilities and what companies and managers can do to support new managers and carve the path to managers. Cleo, over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. So my medical writing career actually started here with Trilogy more than 9 years ago. After a PhD in neuroscience, I left academia and switched to medical writing. I have never looked back since. My days today consist of approximately 70% writing, that is working on various regulatory document types and therapeutic areas, and around 30% line managing, that is leading a team of 6 medical writers, communicating key information from upper management, mentoring them, and building a sense of team. And also a big part of my management duties is overseeing their career development and goals within the company. How about your journey, Nidhi?
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Cleo. So I've been in medical writing for more than 13 years now. And like a lot of medical writers, I fell into this space. I used to work as a non-clinical scientist. I formally got into management, though, about 6 years ago. But I started what I like to call matrix managing, and that happened a while before that. It was really my first glimpse into managing. I realized I loved it. I like to be involved in people's growth. I like to mentor. I like to problem solve. So today my role is to head our North American team at Trilogy. My goal is to grow and retain our team. I'm actively involved in hiring more medical writers for our team, and we are not slowing down, which I think is great news. But it also means that I'm always looking out for managers, right? Both internally and also externally. So Cleo, for our listeners that are, considering going into management, what do you think are some questions that people, in this case, medical writers, should be asking themselves when considering such a role?
Yeah, there are certainly different motivations for why people want to step into a leadership role. And because the manager role is quite different than that of the individual contributor role as a medical writer, it would be important for someone who is considering it to try and figure out if the role would be a good fit. And to find out, let's take a hypothetical medical writer, could reflect on a few key questions that, one, can give them a glimpse into what managers actually do, and two, help them see whether these responsibilities align with their own strengths and motivations. For instance, do you genuinely enjoy working with people and helping them reach their goals and solve their problems? Are you comfortable making decisions, even when things are uncertain? And how do you handle conflict? Do you tend to avoid it, or are you willing to step in and guide a conversation toward resolution? How does the role look like where you work? Do you see yourself doing a similar job? So as one thinks through these questions, they might realize this path really sparks their curiosity, or they might find out it's not quite the right fit right now.
Which is okay, right?
Yeah, exactly. So let's say our hypothetical medical writer decided they want to go into management. What steps do you think, Nidhi, they can take to carve their path into management?
That's a great question. And I'll highlight just a couple key ones here. But first off, I think express interest, right? If you want to be a manager, communicate that desire to your manager. If you don't know yet, that's fine too. It's something you can explore. But I think knowing this information will really help your manager understand what they can do to help you explore and get those right opportunities. I would say also look around to see what opportunities are out there for you, right? Maybe there's mentorship opportunities. You can mentor another junior writer. Maybe you can become an SME in a topic that you're passionate about. Maybe, it's a process improvement opportunity that you can get involved in. If you're on the sponsor side, maybe that looks like a little bit of vendor management, right? That's a good way to gain some managing skills. Any task that can help you learn those new skills, gain confidence, it's going to make you more visible within the organization. And either way, it's going to help support that application, right, to be a manager when that time comes. You heard me say before when I was, introducing myself, matrix managing. Well, I did a lot of this, right? I got involved in various initiatives and mentoring process improvement initiatives in the company, and I loved it. And really, that's how I knew that management was where I wanted to go. Another thing you can do is also look to see what trainings are available, right? Maybe internally at your company or even externally. Really don't underestimate the power of these. I think there's so much great material out there. And I can tell you one of my all-time favorites, The Making of a Manager by Julie Zhao. I only learned about that very recently, after I joined Trilogy. And it's just so relevant to so many levels, not just managers, but even aspiring managers.
Okay, so now we helped the hypothetical medical writer land into a manager role. What are the expectations? Talk to us a little bit about that. How do the first 3 months look like in your opinion?
Yeah, I think those first 3 months are critical, right? This is really when you're establishing credibility. You're building those relationships. You're laying the groundwork for your leadership style. I cannot stress enough how important it is in those first few months to really take the time to build that relationship with your direct line reports. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about relationships and trust later, so I won't get into it right now. But it's not to underestimate the amount of time and effort that new managers have to put in this space. The other thing is, uncertainty and ambiguity. That's really, it comes with being a manager. We managers work in a lot of gray space, and I think learning to be comfortable working in that gray space comes with the role. There's a lot of things and situations that managers are going to face that's not clearly defined, right? There's not one single handbook or manual that tells you what to do in every type of situation. And this is all very normal. And I see a lot of new managers struggle with this. So there is a bit of a mindset shift that comes with being a manager. And I think this is really important for new managers, especially in the first few months, to really get used to and get comfortable with. So, Cleo, what are some of the challenges then that you face as a first-time manager?
Yeah, stepping into the first management role is definitely exciting, but it's also overwhelming. The challenges, of course, vary among individuals based on their circumstance and strengths. But in general, I would say a key challenge is the shift that you mentioned in role and the mindset shift, moving from doing the work yourself to supporting your team. There's also a necessary shift towards more strategic thinking, which is at the beginning not so intuitive to implement. Next is learning to let go of control and empowering your team instead. So delegating is a new tool you must learn to master. Another major challenge personally also for me was time and workload management. You suddenly must squeeze in way more meetings than before. You need to plan your day for writing, but also a lot more admin tasks. As I remember it, it was very intense at the beginning. It took me the good part of 3 months, as you mentioned, until I settled in a new routine without feeling panicked and overwhelmed.
Yeah, it is a new routine. You're right.
Yeah.
And it does take time to get used to it.
Yeah, exactly. And imagine I was in the easy scenario of transitioning into it from the same company I had been for years. So I can definitely predict that it's much more challenging if you are also new to the company you get your first management role.
Absolutely.
And then I had the situation of becoming the manager of a peer. Managing former peers can definitely feel tricky for most of us. This was a question mark for me as well at the beginning. I didn't know how it will work out. And when I started, it was a source of stress and uncertainty. And lastly, there's this new territory of performance management and feedback, I must say it feels quite strange at first to use metrics to rate performance now and to be responsible for delivering feedback, good and critical. And last but not least, handling this additional mental load that comes with managing people just by the nature of the job, being responsible for the livelihoods of others and their work outcomes is definitely a heavy load. So until you find ways to balance things and learn how to not let it consume you, it's quite challenging. So soft skills and fighting against imposter syndrome feelings, the feeling that you're not worthy of being in this role and second guessing yourself are critical to mastering against this type of challenges.
Yeah, imposter syndrome, that is, I'll tell you, something you don't hear a lot of, but everyone feels it, right? And at some point in your career, it's very normal. You said so many things there, Cleo, that I want to pick at things and go deeper dive, but obviously we don't have that much time and we can talk about these things for hours. But let me just ask you this. I mean, going from medical writer to manager, right? You said big mindset shift change, right? The change in relationships. So how do you navigate those relationships? Not only just, up and down, but also across.
Yeah, of course, building strong relationships with your own team is essential and definitely the priority for a manager. Establishing trust and a strong connection within your team is every manager's focus. But that's not where it ends. There is equal importance in the relationship you build with your own manager and your new peers. It is important that you know what it is that your manager is expecting from you. You need to make sure you talk about it. Tell them what is working well, what is not working well. Make sure you take the time to communicate not only the status of your team, but also your own challenges. See them as your mentor. You can use them as a sounding board. But also, as a manager, you have to deal with all sorts of people from outside of your own team. And because there's a lot of cross-functional collaboration that happens at this level, a new manager must learn how to foster relationships across the different functions, which is definitely something new when you step into this role. So building relationships with your peers is equally important because with better relationships comes better communication and information flows more quickly and sometimes even in a less formal way, which is faster, sometimes more efficient. It's a good thing. So take the time to understand the roles your peers play, what their challenges are, what their dependencies are, because I think it is important to think about relationships from all the angles and not just the manager line report relationship.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. It's definitely not one-dimensional.
Yeah. So Nidhi, now we have established, I think we've convinced everybody that managers face all sorts of challenges. Let's shift gears and talk through some strategies on how to balance these challenges with the new leadership responsibilities. What are some tools, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, some words that come to my mind are delegation, being organized, empowerment, right? And I think you very briefly mentioned a couple of those, but I'll go into a little bit more detail. And to me, the art of delegation and prioritization is probably one of the most valuable things you can learn and master as a manager. This can literally be your method of survival, right? For me, it was, and it still is. A never-ending to-do list, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing, right? We all sort of face that. And I think it's really, recently we had this external management training at Trilogy, and what I learned was actually a little life-changing. A never-ending to-do list actually suggests a leader is always thinking of ways to improve and adjusting strategies and priorities. So it's not really a bad thing, right? We're always seeking feedback and refining our approach to drive that progress.
Yeah.
But what do you do? How can you juggle, everything that's on this very long list? And so I came across this very powerful productivity tool, right? The Eisenhower Matrix. And it really it's great the way it's all laid out. And there's some great graphics if you Google it on the internet. But, it basically says that if it's urgent and important, you do it first. If it's neither urgent nor important, you don't do it at all. And if we're somewhere in the middle, urgent, less important, you delegate. And if it's important but not urgent, you schedule it. And, personally, I think this is a great concept to really understand. And what I've started doing is using calendar blocks, for example, right? And I stick by those. I block out time in my calendar to tend to those important tasks that are, that need time. I've also learned to set my OCD aside, right, and get comfortable with just having a baseline of unread emails in my inbox, right? I can't respond to every single email, and I've learned that is okay. I prioritize what needs action. It takes a lot of practice. It doesn't come easy, right? And I still haven't perfected it, but I'm trying, and I think that's what's really important here. Staying organized is just a very important tip, I think, as well. Again, I have my own ways of doing it, by color code calendars. I maintain several OneNote notebooks with key meeting notes and keep my action items in one place. I go back to them routinely. That's just how I like to do things. It works great for me. I'm also a really big believer on having structured meetings, right? Agendas, meeting notes, action items captured. I think it's a really good way of keeping things organized and keeping, notes there, and you can refer back to them when needed. The other thing, which again, I think this one takes a lot of practice too, is establishing boundaries, right? And it didn't come naturally to me. Work can take over, right? And before you know it, that big laundry list of to-dos that you have, right, which is always growing, right? It takes over, and you're working late nights, and you're thinking about it in your shower, and you have to resist the urge, right? Setting boundaries is very important. You need to ensure that you have time for other things that are important. I don't know, family, for example, right? My kids at home, they need time. Your exercise, your community, whatever it is. And there are some, tried and tested ideas that I have. Like, for example, no meeting days, right? Again, I picked this up from Juliet. I cannot take any credit for this, but this was a game changer, right? Saying that, okay, for this one day a week, I will not take any meetings. And it really allows you to just focus on the tasks that you have to do on that to-do list. Having open office hours, I think, is a great one. I regularly find myself suggesting that to managers, especially the new managers that are really having those, distractions throughout the week. And they're saying to me, oh, Nidhi, I can't seem to focus on what I'm doing because I get pinged by my line reports to answer, questions. Well, it's a good way, right? You can have open office hours, and it's basically time that you set in your calendar where you, quote unquote, pop in and speak to your manager. I think clarifying the expectations about your work hours and responsiveness is also very important, right? Just let them know the times that you are not available. And I think that really does help to encourage a culture of work-life balance and removes the pressure, right, to always be on. And I think it's really important that us as managers especially are setting that tone. The other thing is empowering our team. I think, again, this one does not happen overnight. It takes a lot of time and training to get your team in a place where they are comfortable and confident to take decisions on your own. But once that happens, it's beautiful. And I can tell you out of experience, right, that it alleviates the burden, and you see people making those decisions and taking those tasks off your plate.
I feel empowered by you. I can say that.
Thanks, Cleo. So we've talked about several tips. So if you were to choose one, Cleo, one thing that you would maybe want to focus on as a manager, what would that be?
Yeah, I would say start with building trust and authentic relationships. That's, I believe, at the core of a cohesive team. For me, that means showing up as a real person. I've learned that when I'm open about what I know and what I don't, it creates the space for others to do the same. And trust builds when people feel they can speak honestly. And it then allows everyone in the team to share candid feedback that promotes growth and positive change. Nobody's afraid to speak up and share information and feedback. So I would say that would be my first go-to.
And that's a great point, Cleo. And I think that as a manager, there's a lot of work, right, that goes into building that space and making it that space where people do feel like they can trust.
Yeah, definitely. But I guess there's no manual on how to grow leaders and how to be the ideal leader that we want to be. So, what are some tools that we can use in organizations to grow future leaders internally based on your experience, Nidhi?
Yeah, I mean, I think as managers, it's really important for us to give our line reports the tools to grow and eventually step into the management roles, right? Should they want to, of course. And as a company, as an organization, we really need to think about what can we do? What is the foundation that we can set in place to give this platform, right? Make this a reality. And a lot of it starts with what you were saying, trust and the environment that we built, right? Creating that supportive, nurturing culture. It allows people to make mistakes, learn from them, not to be afraid to take risks, and have the courage to have that conversation with their manager. Another aspect is performance, right? In order for people to grow, it is really important for them to have a way of, getting that feedback, right? So I think, assessing individual performance, providing that feedback is a really big part of allowing people to grow and eventually step into management roles. I think the worst thing you can do is allow someone to carry on with a bad habit, right? Without correcting course. And so I think it's a really big part of creating this space where people learn. Um, Creating a leadership mindset, I think, is another one, and I personally love this one. It's really about making space for employees to feel empowered and accountable, right? It improves decision making, it builds confidence. Um, Leadership training, I think, is another one. And I would like to honestly see more and more companies invest in this. I know here at Trilogy, we invest a lot of resources into leadership training. There's a lot of studies out there, right, to support and show the value that it brings and the boost that it does to not only employee performance, but also morale. So I think it's a really big aspect. The other big one I would say is a well-defined career path, and that's something that I think Trilogy does a great job in, right? Having a clear document that outlines roles, responsibilities at each level, and clearly shows the path that employees need to take if they want to progress and eventually step into management. I think just having that clarity, setting those expectations from the start really helps.
Yeah, that
on
helped
path.
me definitely. That was what showed me what the role looks like and had me started considering it for
Exactly.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's a very big part of what we can do in terms of, carving the path to management.
Mhm.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of topics, and I think you can see we can talk about this for hours easily. So Cleo, is there anything else you wanted to maybe close out with today?
Yeah, how about I pick on something you mentioned about feedback and individual performance. I also spoke a little bit earlier about having trust within the team so you can share candid feedback with each other. I see it also as a form of respecting others. I respect you as a person and I want you to grow. I don't want others to think that you're making a mistake too. So I come to you first and I try to fix things with you and make our collaboration, our team as a whole better. And I think doing this by example encourages others to do that with you as well as with their other collaborations. And I think that is an environment that fosters this feedback culture that will only bring good things to an organization. I think we've seen a shift towards the direction at Trilogy, and now with annual reviews happening at this time of the year, I hear it very often that this is something my team really, really appreciates and enjoys the fruits of already. So,
No, that's a great point, Cleo. Thank you. Thanks for that perspective. Okay,
sure.
well then, thank you for joining us today and hearing us talk to you about all things management in the medical writing space. We hope that you've learned something from this podcast. Please feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn and let us know if you have any questions or comments. Obviously, Cleo and I can take a deep dive into any of these sessions that you found interesting today. So if there's something you would like us to focus in on, maybe at one of the later sessions, please reach out and we would love to maybe do a part 2 to this. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to TriloTalk today. If you have feedback you'd like to share, or if you have any ideas for future topics you'd like us to cover, particularly something you think the community should be talking about, we would love to hear it. We would like this to be an ongoing conversation with medical writers at large, and you can send us your comments on our Twitter feed or our LinkedIn page. Just a reminder, you can find all our episodes of TriloTalk podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, Spotify, and trilogywriting.com/TriloTalk. Have a great rest of your day.